Hi, I'm Dr. Jake Bicknell at the University of Kent and I'm a lecturer in conservation. So what is nature conservation and does it even work? Well, that's what I want to talk to you about today. Here at the University of Kent, we recognise that we need nature. Humans need biodiversity, we need forests, we need our oceans and we need our natural habitats. Nature supports all life. The planet is the reason for our existence and the reason for our survival. Like these mangrove forests protecting the community behind, and the coral reef protecting from the wave action, stopping floods. In fact, services provided by nature are actually valued at half of the global gross domestic product. Basically, half of all the money that goes around the world is services provided for free by nature. It's for free. So conservation aims to protect that, to look after humans for our future. But what happens when humans start to break down biodiversity and break down the processes that nature conservation gives to us? Things we call ecosystem services. Well, this is something I want to explore with you, and it's something that we're going to explore a lot during our ecology and conservation degree. We have two pathways, broadly speaking, a good one and a bad one. And at the moment, we could probably say that humans are heading towards the less good one. So what is nature conservation? Well, it's a lot of different things, and it's very much underpinned by this interaction between humans and nature. Biodiversity, wildlife, habitats, forests, coral reefs, mangroves, everything. So nature conservation is about trying to find ways to look after those different habitats, for example, or different wildlife. And it's about reducing the impacts of the things that humans do. So yes, it might be planting trees or protecting rhinos from poachers, but it's also working with things like farmers to increase the biodiversity of farmland. And in particular, it's about working with people. And all of those things that we do in nature conservation, it's hopefully also about changing policies, talking to decision makers, politicians, people that can enact different pathway for our future. So we're asking the question here at the University of Kent, does nature conservation even work? Well, I was involved in a recent study published in the journal Science, which is one of the most world-renowned scientific publications in the world. And this study looked at whether conservation globally is actually having an impact on biodiversity. And because of the findings of the research that were overwhelmingly positive, and because of the approach that was used that was global and state-of-the-art analyses, this work was picked up by a lot of different media outlets, including the BBC. 66% of the time in the studies that we looked at in this piece of research, 66% of the time it's working. The blue or the greeny area is higher than the red area, basically meaning there's more biodiversity when we did some kind of conservation action. Whereas a third of the time, or 33% of the time, actually there was no particularly good impact of those conservation interventions. So what does this mean, and is that surprising? Well, it's not surprising that about 30% of the time or so conservation doesn't work, because conservation is exceptionally complex. We're dealing with people and we're dealing with pressures that are unprecedented for biodiversity. But also, there are cases where there are unintended consequences of conservation. So, for example, one of the studies included here showed that a marine protected area didn't benefit the seahorses that it was trying to benefit, but it did benefit the things that eat seahorses, and as a result, that's why the seahorses weren't better off as a result of conservation action. So you can see there that even when conservation maybe doesn't work, it's worked, but for something else. So the predators of seahorses did quite well from that marine protected area. And then, of course, there are cases when we can learn from our mistakes as conservation practitioners and use them to go forwards. And so this study looked at all different types of conservation actions, from protected areas to sustainable use of species, and to the removal of invasive and problematic species and things like alien predators. And what this figure shows, again, is slightly complex, but the further over to the right-hand side shows a better impact of conservation under those types of interventions. So what we can see is that overall conservation is working because it's away from the zero line. But we can see that things like invasive and problematic species, the control of those has a massively positive impact on conservation. So let me give you an example. Let's imagine we have an island that has ground nesting birds on that island, and rats arrive on that island unnaturally as a result of human activities. Now those rats can go around and eat all of the ground nesting birds' eggs, and the result is that that bird is massively impacted and possibly goes extinct. So humans can come on board and remove those invasive rats, and hopefully we can see those birds' populations recovering. And that's the sort of things that conservation can do. Practical stuff on the ground, making a difference for biodiversity. Now, I mentioned before that some studies didn't show any positive impact of conservation. Well, we can learn from those. And this study actually shows that we're getting better at conservation over time. And this figure shows that over the years, the impact, which is on the y-axis up the side, versus the publication year, so the when the conservation study was published, we're showing that there's a general increase in the impact of conservation, the positive impact of conservation. So basically what this means is even when we've been getting things wrong in the past, we're now getting better, we're learning from that. So that's really positive news. And so together, sort of these different things that we've talked about today show that conservation is working, and it tells you a bit of what conservation is. It's so many different things. So I encourage you to use #ConservationWorks. Come to the University of Kent and learn more about these things and learn how you can become a conservationist and an ecologist yourself. So we do have some reason for optimism, and you can come here and make a real difference. Thank you.